Imagine for a moment that wisdom isn't just something we gain with age, or something hidden in books, or something whispered by monks in silence. What if wisdom is energy, something alive, something contagious, something that can spread from one heart to another faster than any trend, faster than any piece of content online? We live in a world where everything that goes viral is often what entertains us for a few seconds and then disappears. A dance, a meme, a clip, it flashes and fades. But wisdom has the power to go viral in a very different way. Wisdom doesn't just spark a laugh, it sparks transformation. When someone shares an insight about patience or love or resilience, it doesn't just stay on the screen, it lingers in our choices, in the way we speak, in the way we treat the people around us. Think about the last time you heard something truly wise. Maybe it was a sentence, maybe just a word, but it hit you so deeply that it changed the way you saw your life. That's the real virality of wisdom. It doesn't fade after a scroll. It plants roots in your mind and begins to grow. And the beautiful part is, you become a carrier. You pass it on, often without even realizing it. You live differently. You love differently. And suddenly, everyone who crosses paths with you receives a piece of that wisdom. Wisdom isn't about knowing more. It's about being more aware. It's about noticing the small lessons in the everyday moments. The smile of a stranger, the silence after a mistake, the courage it takes to begin again. When you embrace those lessons, you embody them, and people can feel that energy around you. That energy spreads, and in that way, wisdom becomes viral, not through clicks and views, but through hearts and lives. So the question isn't whether wisdom can go viral. The question is, are we willing to live in a way that makes it impossible not to? Because true wisdom doesn't demand attention, it inspires it. It doesn't push itself onto the world. It invites the world to see differently, feel differently, and act differently. And once it's felt, it keeps moving endlessly from one soul to the next. Imagine for a moment that wisdom isn't just something we gain with age, or something hidden in books, or something whispered by monks in silence. What if wisdom is energy, something alive, something contagious, something that can spread from one heart to another faster than any trend, faster than any piece of content online? We live in a world where everything that goes viral is often what entertains us for a few seconds and then disappears. A dance, a meme, a clip, it flashes and fades. But wisdom has the power to go viral in a very different way. Wisdom doesn't just spark a laugh, it sparks transformation. When someone shares an insight about patience or love or resilience, it doesn't just stay on the screen. It lingers in our choices, in the way we speak, in the way we treat the people around us. Think about the last time you heard something truly wise. Maybe it was a sentence, maybe just a word, but it hit you so deeply that it changed the way you saw your life. That's the real virality of wisdom. It doesn't fade after a scroll. It plants roots in your mind and begins to grow. And the beautiful part is, you become a carrier. You pass it on, often without even realizing it. You live differently, you love differently, you speak differently. And suddenly, everyone who crosses paths with you receives a piece of that wisdom. Wisdom isn't about knowing more, it's about being more aware. It's about noticing the small lessons in the everyday moments. the smile of a stranger, the silence after a mistake, the courage it takes to begin again. When you embrace those lessons, you embody them, and people can feel that energy around you. That energy spreads, and in that way, wisdom becomes viral. Not through clicks and views, but through hearts and lives. Every time you choose kindness when you could have chosen judgment, every time you choose patience when you could have chosen anger, every time you choose truth when you could have chosen convenience, you release wisdom into the world, and wisdom travels. It doesn't just stay with you, it ripples outward. You might never know how far it goes, but it keeps moving. That's what makes it powerful. We often think of wisdom as something heavy, something serious, something locked away in sacred texts or complex philosophies. But wisdom can be simple. It can be hidden in laughter. It can be wrapped in silence. It can come through a child's question or an elder's pause before answering. Wisdom doesn't need to announce itself loudly. It whispers. And yet those whispers echo endlessly. The truth is, we are always sharing something. We are always contagious. Sometimes we spread stress, frustration, and negativity without realizing it. Walk into a room after an argument, and you can feel the tension, even if no one tells you what happened. That's the power of energy. But imagine if instead of passing around frustration, we passed around wisdom. Imagine if our presence didn't just leave people drained, but left them more grounded, more hopeful, more inspired to live their own truth. That is what happens when wisdom goes viral. And the beautiful thing is, wisdom is not reserved for a chosen few. You don't need a degree in philosophy to be wise. You don't need 1,000 experiences to hold wisdom. You only need presence. You only need awareness. You only need the courage to pay attention to what life is teaching you right now. Because life is always teaching. Every mistake, every heartbreak, every success, every pause, it's all a classroom if we're willing to learn. Think about it. Some of the greatest lessons you carry didn't come from lectures or textbooks. They came from moments of failure, moments of loss, moments of love. Maybe it was the day you realized that holding on to anger hurts you more than it hurts anyone else. Maybe it was the day you discovered that forgiveness doesn't mean weakness, it means freedom. Maybe it was the day you understood that your worth was never tied to how many people approve of you. Those moments are wisdom. And when you share them, when you embody them, when you live them out loud, they become viral. There's a reason people remember stories more than they remember statistics. A story holds energy. A story carries feeling. When you share the wisdom of your life through your actions, through your choices, through your compassion, you're telling a story. And that story has the power to ripple across lives you may never meet. We underestimate the influence we have on others. You may think your wisdom isn't valuable because you don't have a large platform, because you don't speak to thousands of people. But wisdom doesn't need a stage to be viral. It only needs a single moment. One kind word at the right time can stay with someone for years. One piece of advice, one act of patience, one display of courage, that can transform the course of another person's life. You might not see it, but it happens. The wisest things are the simplest. Drink water, take a breath, call someone you love, slow down, listen before you respond. Appreciate what you already have. We dismiss these truths because they seem too small, but wisdom isn't measured in complexity. It's measured in impact. And the simplest truths are often the ones that last the longest because they are the foundation of everything else. And here's the paradox. Wisdom becomes viral not when we try to spread it, but when we live it. People don't need lectures. They need examples. They don't need more noise. They need clarity. They don't need to be told how to live. They need to see what it looks like when someone is living with intention. When you embody wisdom, you don't have to promote it. People feel it. And when they feel it, they want to share it. Not because you ask them to, but because wisdom feels like a light in a dark room. And light is meant to be seen. The world today is flooded with information but starved of wisdom. We know more, but sometimes we understand less. We have endless data, endless updates, endless feeds of content. But wisdom is what allows us to pause and ask, what truly matters? What will I remember at the end of my life? What will make this moment meaningful? When wisdom goes viral, it cuts through the noise. It doesn't add more distraction, it offers direction. Picture wisdom like a seed. Every time you learn something, every time you reflect on something, every time you choose differently because of an insight, you plant a seed. And when you live that wisdom, when you share it, when you act from it, the seed blossoms and someone else receives the fruit. That person in turn carries the seed forward. And slowly, without anyone forcing it, without algorithms, without trends, wisdom grows into forests that last for generations. You don't always know where your wisdom will land. You may say something today that feels small, and 5 years from now, someone might recall it at the exact moment they need it most. That's the hidden journey of wisdom. It keeps traveling long after we've forgotten we sent it out. A laugh fades, a trend disappears, but wisdom lingers. It stays in the soil of the soul, waiting for the right season to bloom. If you look around, you'll notice that some of the wisest people are not the loudest. They're the ones who listen deeply, who observe quietly, who live gently. They aren't trying to impress anyone. They aren't trying to be viral. And yet, their presence becomes unforgettable. Because real wisdom doesn't need volume to be heard. It needs truth. So many of us chase influence. We want to be seen, to be heard, to make an impact. But the most powerful impact you can have is when your wisdom touches another person's life, even if no one else ever sees it. Viral wisdom isn't measured in millions of views. It's measured in the millions of moments made better because of the way you lived. The question is, what are you passing on? What energy are you releasing into the world every day? When someone leaves a conversation with you, do they feel lighter or heavier? When someone observes the way you handle difficulty, do they feel inspired or discouraged? Every action is a message. Every word is a seed. Every moment is a chance to spread wisdom or waste it. We can choose to be amplifiers of noise, or we can choose to be carriers of wisdom. And when we make that choice, we discover something incredible. Wisdom doesn't diminish when it's shared. It multiplies. The more you give, the more you live, the more you embody it, the deeper it grows within you. It's the opposite of scarcity, it's abundance. And that abundance is what makes it unstoppable. Wisdom as a viral force is not about fame, not about popularity, not about being followed. It's about being felt. It's about creating a ripple effect so powerful that Even if your name is forgotten, the wisdom you shared continues to move through time. Because people may not remember who said the words, but they'll remember how those words made them see themselves differently. How those words helped them through a storm. How those words gave them courage to take the next step. If you think about it, the wisdom we carry today is not just our own. It's the wisdom of ancestors, teachers, mentors, strangers, and friends. All passed down, all reshaped, all kept alive because someone chose to embody it instead of just keeping it. We are all carriers of ancient wisdom without realizing it. And now the question is, what wisdom will we choose to pass forward? Everywhere you go, people are searching for something lasting. They scroll endlessly, hoping that the next post, the next message, the next trend will give them the sense of meaning they crave. And yet, all the noise often leaves us emptier than before. But then, once in a while, someone shares something different. Not flashy, not loud, just true. And suddenly, it's like the soul stops scrolling. It listens, it feels. That is wisdom showing its strength, cutting through the noise like light through darkness. A story of a man who was always chasing wealth. He believed success was measured in how much he owned, in the recognition he received. But after years of striving, he met an old woman who lived in a small house by the sea. She owned almost nothing, yet she radiated joy. He asked her the secret. She smiled and said, "The more you hold, the less you can dance. The lighter you are, the freer you feel." Those words hit him harder than all the lectures and business lessons he had ever studied. That single sentence changed the direction of his life. That is how wisdom works. It doesn't need a long explanation. A single truth, lived authentically, can transform someone forever. Wisdom goes viral, not just in what is spoken, but in what is witnessed. You may never tell someone to be compassionate, but when they see you care for someone in pain, without expecting anything in return, that image stays with them. You may never preach patience, but when people see you remain calm in the middle of chaos, they learn what it looks like to stand steady. That kind of wisdom doesn't need to be explained. It is felt, and when it is felt, it is shared. We live in an age where everyone has a platform, where every thought can be broadcast instantly. But that doesn't mean every thought is worth spreading. The true measure is not how quickly something spreads, but how deeply it stays. Virality that fades is entertainment. Virality that remains is wisdom. And every single one of us has the capacity to spread that kind of wisdom, not by trying to be profound, but by being present. Not by trying to be clever, but by being genuine. Not by chasing attention, but by offering intention. Wisdom looks like silence. In a world obsessed with having the last word, the wise person knows when to hold back. Silence can be more powerful than any argument. Sometimes wisdom looks like laughter. Not the shallow laughter of mockery, but the deep laughter that says, "I have seen suffering, and yet I choose joy." Sometimes wisdom looks like walking away, not out of weakness, but out of strength, because you know that peace is more valuable than proving a point. There was once a young student who asked his teacher how he could learn faster. The teacher handed him a cup already filled with water and poured more into it until it overflowed. The student panicked and said, "Stop, it's already full." The teacher smiled and said, "Exactly. You cannot learn until you empty your cup. That lesson has echoed across centuries, across cultures, across millions of lives. Why? Because it's wisdom. And wisdom doesn't age. It doesn't expire. It remains true, always ready to find new hearts to live in. When you think about it, some of the most viral ideas in human history are not just information, but wisdom. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Be still and know. These aren't complex equations or technical knowledge. They're timeless truths. They are repeated, reshaped, and remembered because they carry the essence of life. And each time they are lived out, their impact multiplies. But here's the challenge. Wisdom spreads slower than noise. Noise is immediate. It shocks, it excites, it distracts. Wisdom takes time. It asks you to pause, to reflect, to change. And yet, when it finally takes root, it lasts infinitely longer. A shocking image may stay in your mind for a day, but a wise lesson can stay in your soul for a lifetime. That's the difference. Wisdom doesn't aim for speed, it aims for depth. And in this way, you and I hold responsibility, because whether we realize it or not, we are always influencing our words, our choices, our actions. They are seeds being carried forward. The question is not whether we are viral, but what we are viral with. Are we spreading fear or faith? Are we spreading anger or understanding? Are we spreading emptiness or wisdom? Because every conversation, every interaction, every post, every moment is a chance to release something into the world that will keep moving long after we're gone. Often imagine wisdom like fire. One flame can light 1,000 candles without losing its strength. And each candle, in turn, can light 1,000 more. Soon, what began as a single flame becomes a sky filled with light. That is what happens when wisdom goes viral. One truth, one lesson, one moment of insight passed from one life to another can illuminate entire generations. Look at how parents shape their children. A father teaches his child resilience by how he faces setbacks. A mother teaches her child compassion by how she treats strangers. Those lessons ripple through the child's life, into the lives they touch, into the lives those people touch. Long after the parents are gone, their wisdom continues to live, carried in gestures, in words, in choices made by people they never met. That is the immortality of wisdom. That is its viral nature. But wisdom is also humble. It doesn't force itself. It waits. It whispers. It offers. It doesn't beg to be shared. But when someone receives it, they can't help but want to pass it on. That's why wisdom outlasts trends. Because trends demand attention, but wisdom deserves it. So many of us think we need to shout louder to be heard, but the truth is, wisdom spreads not because of volume, but because of resonance. When something resonates, it travels effortlessly. It doesn't need marketing, it needs meaning. And the deepest wisdom always carries meaning because it touches the universal parts of us. Love, loss, hope, courage, forgiveness. These are the languages every human heart understands, no matter where we are, no matter what we've been through. And this is the invitation life gives us every day to turn our experiences into wisdom and then to release that wisdom into the world. Every challenge you face can either make you bitter or make you wiser. Every loss can either harden your heart or deepen your compassion. Every success can either inflate your ego or expand your generosity. Life is offering lessons constantly. The question is, are we willing to receive them? And once we do, are we willing to share them? Wisdom as a viral force is not about perfection. It's not about pretending to have all the answers. In fact, some of the deepest wisdom comes from admitting we don't know, from being vulnerable enough to share our failures, from being open enough to say, this is what life taught me when I fell. Because when we share from that place of humility, people connect. They see themselves in us. And that connection is what allows wisdom to spread. Imagine a world where wisdom was what we wanted to make viral, where we shared more lessons than gossip, where we spread more compassion than criticism, where we value timeless truths over temporary noise. That world is possible not because of governments or systems, but because of individuals like you and me, choosing to live differently, choosing to be mindful of the energy we spread, choosing to make wisdom our contribution. Because at the end of the day, wisdom doesn't live in words, it lives in lives. It lives in the way you hold space for someone in pain. It lives in the way you forgive when it's hard. It lives in the way you keep showing up when life knocks you down. That is wisdom in action. That is wisdom in motion. And once wisdom is in motion, it cannot be stopped. It moves through us, beyond us, and far past us. It becomes eternal. Here's a powerful conclusion in the same voice and rhythm. Something that leaves the audience with a lasting spark and a strong call to carry wisdom forward. And so when you walk out of here today, remember this. You don't need millions of followers to make wisdom viral. You only need the courage to live it. Because wisdom is not measured in how many people see it, but in how many lives it quietly transforms. Every word you speak, every action you take, every choice you make, it's all contagious. The question is, what will you spread? Noise or truth? Fear or love? Anger or compassion? The world doesn't need more noise. The world needs your wisdom. And when you choose to live it, you become the spark, you become the flame, and from you that flame can ignite countless others. That is how wisdom becomes a force that never fades. That is how wisdom goes viral.